I suppose you're proud of yourself.
Just telling it like it is.
That's been your excuse for the last 60, 70 years.
My excuse?
Your excuse for hurting people whenever the hell you feel like it.
I don't hurt people.
Oh no? I guess you didn't hurt Aunt Dolly on her wedding day when you said she looked like a cheap Las Vegas hooker.
Well, did you see the wedding dress? The back of it was cut right down to here. You could see the crack of her... Well, it was indecent.
And I guess you didn't hurt Cousin Jerry when you called his German wife a Nazi who probably slept with Hitler.
There's no proof that she didn't.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to NYC Actors Talk Film. And this is our mini-series on John Candy, NYC Actors Talk John Candy. You see, we're a podcast series where we go through actors' filmography and most prolific work. I'm Nick.
I'm Hunter.
And Hunter. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Nick?
I'm alright.
I'm good. That's good.
I'm alright. What film are we talking about today in our John Candy miniseries?
Only the Lonely. The 1991 Chris Columbus classic? Question mark?
Classic?
Is it a classic?
We will have to find out. I'm just gonna speak in a falsetto for the rest of the episode. Starting now.
Hello.
Hello. And speaking of hello, Christopher Columbus founded America. And also a film director.
He's what's the word?
Well, he's at least a double threat, if not a triple threat.
Yeah, no. He's a double threat, and then add John Candy in the mix, triple threat.
That's true. John Candy is an actor in his movies.
But yeah,
this is my he multitask. Sorry, he multitasks. This Christopher Columbus guy.
Oh yeah, you love
Founded America, directed Only the Lonely, and Miss Doubtfire, and that's all I could. And Home Alone.
Yeah. Just minor indie films.
Minor, yeah, very underground.
Yeah.
Indie flicks.
So this is my first time. I've never even heard of this movie before. You put it on the list.
I did, and I was researching John Candy. You know, his more memorable roles in his unfortunately very short career. This one popped up because this one, the way I was reading it anyway, like this one seemed like, oh yeah, this is a little different from some of the other ones. This is more dramatic. He's the romantic lead, which is obviously for John Candy a very unconventional romantic lead. You know, it's pretty against type, kind of like in Splash when he was a playboy. It's kind of like that, where I was like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, yeah, I definitely want to do this one to cover this movie. Starring him, he's the star again, romantic lead, Ali Sheedy from Breakfast Club fame. She is the romantic interest. Maureen O'Hara is the mom. She is a very famous film actress from in her youth, and she came back for this movie. Any fun facts about that, Hunter?
Yes. Her last movie was in 1971, which is kind of crazy, and the writer for this film wanted her to play it like really bad, and so they sent her the script, and she was like, I'm gonna do this. And then after this film, she never did anything else again. So she kind of came out of retirement.
So this was her last movie?
Yep.
So the one that got her out of retirement and her last movie. Interesting.
Yeah. Interesting, right?
Yeah. Jim Belushi, he plays kind of like the sex-crazy best friend. Who else is in this movie, Hunter?
Oh gosh, Macaulay Culkin.
Macaulay Culkin shows up.
He shows up, which
he says like two lines and then falls.
I know.
Like a little boy.
Like a little boy. In the last movie that we sent, because he's in Uncle Buck. So this is his third movie with John Candy.
Third movie.
Yeah, because
Home Alone. That's right. Home Alone's the second.
Yeah. And it's interesting that Chris Columbus, he wanted Macaulay Culkin to do a cameo in this, just like John Candy did a cameo in that. And so it's kind of like a little teeter totter of cameos there.
Yeah, so this is an interesting movie, 1991, right? That's when
Yes.
it came out. So yeah, this is an interesting one. I'm curious what you think, Hunter. I myself am curious about what I think, because who knows what I think about this movie? Hunter, you're probably still thinking, does he like it? Does he hate it? What
Does
is
he
he
hate it?
thinking?
Yeah.
So Hunter, I'll give it to you first. This is your first viewing. What did you think of Only the Lonely?
So I think this movie is fine. It's there. It's John. I will say John Candy, very handsome in this movie. He's a very handsome guy in this
Oh,
movie.
he's a catch in this.
Yeah, like the other movies, he's playing like kind of his shtick, but it's like, oh, he's a handsome fellow in this movie, and he does a very good job. And actually, I think everybody in this movie knows the movie that they're making, and everybody's doing a very good job. Saying that, I don't think I will remember this movie in like a few days. It's kind of forgettable, except for Maureen O'Hara's role will probably stick with me for life for some reason.
For life,
Um,
okay.
life. Um, but yeah, this movie's fine. I think I'll unravel my thoughts a little bit more as we converse. But yeah, what did you think?
Um, yeah, I was very intrigued to watch this because I was like, oh, this seems like a little different, a little more underrated than some of the other movies we've done. Where this one isn't as well known as like a Splash or like Planes, Trains, Automobiles.
Mm.
So I was very interested in watching this, and I don't think it's a great movie by any means. I think it's pretty flawed in some areas, especially when it comes to the romance between John Candy and Ali Sheedy. But I actually quite enjoyed this. I liked it. I at first I thought, oh, I'm not gonna like this movie. I at first like with the first couple of scenes, I was like, yeah, I get what the movie's trying to do. Like, yeah, he has like his mom has a hold over him and everything, and I was like, oh, are we playing this just kind of like one note, like yeah, mom's evil? And so I was worried about that from the start, but that isn't the case. And by the end of it, I was actually more than even the romance in the movie. I was more pulled in by the relationship between him and his mom.
Interesting. Because I did not take that from this movie.
Interesting.
I
Interesting.
thought, and maybe my mind will change, but from my viewing, I thought that the mom was kind of like just very awful and just like,
But that's the point.
no, I know, but like very just like one note. And at the end of this movie that we'll get to, like there's no like resolution there. You know what I
Interesting.
mean?
Yeah, we'll get into that. That's interesting that
Yeah.
you say that because not to say I fully disagree, but I do favor that stuff, I guess, more than you did. But yeah, so yeah, just to kind of get through like kind of the main points, the main plot points of this movie. So yeah, we kind of start with John Candy. He's a cop. Everyone likes him. You know, he's saying hi to everyone in the neighborhood, which is always just really charming because like John Candy is that guy, was that guy in real life. So like, you know, just to see that reflected on screen as much as possible is always just good because that was his legacy. So you know, you want to see that in like almost every movie he was in. So yeah, like yeah, and his mom is very controlling and very petty, and you know, basically a typical mom of any ethnicity, really, like Italian, Irish. You know, they're all, you know, it's a stereotype, but it's a stereotype for a reason because sometimes that's very true. Like you know,
Yeah.
sometimes older moms are like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, so you know, he kind of has visions of like, oh, if I go to this game with my friends and leave my mom alone, like, will she die? Will she get into an accident? Like, basically, like he's fantasizing, like, oh, what if this happens while I'm away? You know, like, oh, and you know, it's kind of a guilt thing that he definitely like picked up from like his mom and everything. Like like, oh, should I not think for myself at all? Should I not be at least a little bit selfish in life? Should I always think about her and family and everything? Should I not? Ever should I never think about myself in life? Should I always do things for other people? And I think that's pushed to a limit as we get through or go through his kind of character arc throughout the movie. And I don't think it's a clean arc by any means, but I do think it's there, and I think it works well enough. And I'll kind of explain why as we get through the movie. But yeah, any thoughts about all that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a good arc for John Candy in this movie. But like, I don't know, like there's a lot of things that the mom says that are just like, oh man, you are like such a bigot.
Yeah,
and like they don't.
She is a bigot.
I know she is, but like, I guess I wanted some like, I guess it's realistic, but I guess I wanted some like, I learned that I was wrong.
So like I mean? For you, it was like a little too mean spirited, where you didn't see the purpose of all that, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I wanted some sort of like, she learned from her way. Otherwise, it was like, especially the plane sequence where like her and her man that she found or whatever, like.
Oh, and what a charming man he is. He's like picking flowers in the beginning of the movie for her. What a gentleman.
I wanted to get into him some because I wanted a movie that was him trying to get her. I wanted to spin off a little bit because he was very good. Yeah,
he was very charming in the movie. A few scenes, but I think every scene he was in, I was like, oh, like look at this charming old man, just trying his best to, to find love, and he's pushing for it, but like at the end of the day, it's mostly like a really charming subplot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I guess I just didn't see the point of like of that. I guess.
Interesting. Well, to kind of play devil's avocado a little bit, I think that sometimes the purpose is that's the character. Mm-hmm. Like they're kind of set in their ways, and she's very much an antagonistic force for a lot of the movie for a reason. Mm-hmm. And I will kind of argue that she does have kind of a character turn. Once again, do I think it's the cleanest character turn of all time? Absolutely not. I do mm-hmm. think there's some unearned moments in her kind of resolution, but there are some other ways that they resolve her character that I thought was actually pretty excellent. I wish the whole movie was that in a way, mm-hmm. because we'll get into the romance very soon. But I actually thought that the strongest stuff of the movie was the relationship between O'Hara and Candy. Their chemistry is on point. Once again, more than the romantic chemistry, in my opinion. And I actually thought that was like the best stuff of the movie.
I will agree with that. I think their chemistry was amazing, and their scenes together were what drove the movie. And especially how you say that the chemistry is better than the romantic chemistry. I only fell for that because of John Candy, because I liked him in this movie a lot. So I was like, okay, I'll look past the I don't know, just how they.
It's kind of one note. I mean, like it's a one note romance. I mean, I'll definitely agree with that. I think Ali Sheedy is very charming in the movie. I think she's a cutie patootie, mm-hmm. and she's doing good work here. I think the one time, and the movie knows this too because they bring it back later in the movie. But the one really charming scene they have is at the beginning when he's like listing like, okay, here's the reasons why you won't go out with me. Mm-hmm. And he's kind of listing all these things like, oh, are you gonna get your legs waxed, or are you gonna do this? And she's just like, every time, more and more kind of charmed by him, like, no. So I thought that was really charming. And once again, like, they bring it back at the end because the movie even knows, like, yeah, that was a really charming, scene with them. that's the only charming scene with them in my opinion. But I think it's just undercooked. I think that's the problem with it. Is like it's really one note and undercooked, and like there's a yeah, we'll get into it now because like yeah, so everything with the mom with John Candy, you know, he has the Jim Belushi best friend. He's a cop. He meets the girl Ali Sheedy. He's like head over heels for her, but you know she works at a funeral home. She puts makeup on the bodies, the dead bodies. And makes the bodies kind of look like famous old-timey movie actors and actresses, which I thought was a charming detail.
Yeah.
That once again, they don't really dive deep into why she does that or anything, but like I thought it was an interesting, like, oh, okay, that's weird, but like okay, that's like an interesting kind of hook to like the relationship. Like, oh, like yeah, she's a cute girl and all, and she does this. It's like, oh yeah, okay, interesting. And actually, what made me laugh out loud is once that kind of meet cute scene happens and he leaves, and they have so they have a date, and like they're what is it, like all these he's leaving the building and they're carrying the coffin.
Oh yeah. And he's like, oh yes, and he's like, oh sorry, I just got lucky with some girl. And they're like, what? And he's like, no, not like that. She does a lot of people in there. Or, like she probably did that guy, for instance. I was like, I gotta go.
Which I legitimately laughed out loud at that part. I don't think this is like a funny movie, and I don't think it's trying to be all that funny, which I actually kind of appreciate about this movie is that it's kind of pulled back. That it's kind of like, oh, this is like, yeah, dramatic, but without like, I don't know, being so self-serious, because it is pretty jokey at points, and I think some of it works better than others, but I think I liked how reserved it mostly was. Like there was only a few like really zany moments that didn't really care for, with like Jim Belushi and like the dead body, because you could tell that was clearly like in a very 80s or in this case a very early 90s kind of type of humor that's like like I'm on the floor laughing. I'm not, but the movie thinks I'm on the floor laughing at this point. But so there's a few moments, but for the most part, like pulled back in a way that I actually appreciated.
Yeah, it's a very romantic feel that I liked, and something that I read.
Some beautiful shots, by the way.
Yes.
And when we get into the second date with Ali Sheedy and Candy, because the first date is like really awkward. They're like at a baseball field. They're at a stadium just alone. There's like one guy there, like it's, and then there's the running joke like, oh, it's good to be a cop. Like I know people, and so like he's a friend of his that like puts the fireworks up and everything, and like because there's the idea like she's really awkward and introverted, and it's like she makes it out to be like it's a disease. I don't know, like plenty of people are introverted. I don't know, was that like a 90s thing where it's like introverted? What is that? That's crazy.
I don't know, because I mean there are some like things that make people that way, but
that's true. I mean that's a good point.
Yeah, but I did think that was an interesting thing. Like, I'm introverted. What? That just means you're shy.
Right, I was actually agreeing with Candy. Like, yeah, like some people are shy and introverted. Like, that's not like but I thought that was an interesting. I don't really delve deep into that in any like significant way. She just kind of becomes more confident a scene or two later.
Yeah. But something that I was going to say about like the feel of this movie, how you were saying that it's very pulled back. Something that I read that Maureen O'Hara, who played the mom, told John Candy that he reminded her of Charles Lofton. I think I'm saying that right, which is like an old-time actor who played. I can't remember any of the other movies that I looked up, but he played Rembrandt, which I thought was interesting. He was kind of like a funny guy who turned into like a serious dramatic actor back in the day. But like citing that underneath the clown character had existed a powerful, complicated actor, and she told him to trust his talent as an actor and not always play the clown, which you see that in this movie. It's like, oh, he's very like. Introverted is obviously the wrong word, but like he's very pulled back and he's not trying to get a laugh, which I appreciated about his performance.
Absolutely, I definitely agree with you. I think this is strong work, and some of the strong, more some of the what am I trying to say? It's slightly stronger than some of his other movies that we have covered because of that. Because like, you know, it's lighthearted, and it's definitely like a sensitive betrayal. You know, he's a sensitive guy and everything,
Mhm.
but like it's never like completely at the expense of him, which is why I loved his performance in Planes, Trains, Automobiles, and you can see that in this performance.
Yeah, I think we got a lot in this movie what we were kind of hoping for him in like other movies. It's like, oh, like as you said, we kind of see it in Planes, Trains, Automobiles with like a few scenes where it's like I like me or whatever. But this movie is like very pulled back and very sensitive and very unique in that way. And so I think I like this movie for his performance. I will say.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. No, wonderfully said, Hunter. Yeah, that's why I like the performance too.
Mm.
So yeah, oh, and once again, speaking of beautiful shots, yeah. So yeah, the first day was iffy, but as we kind of mentioned, yeah, she mentioned she's introverted. You know, I want to try again. You know, can we go out again? He's like, of course. And so yeah, we kind of get this montage where they're in Chicago. You know, they're going. You know, they're seeing the sights of Chicago. There's this beautiful shot where it's like the sunset and like the two of them in the corner.
Yep, I was literally gonna bring that up.
Badass, right?
So beautiful. It's so good. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And then
Yeah.
and then I think it's in the same like scenes that you're talking about, and it kind of zooms in on them, and they're holding hands and they're walking away. It's beautiful, like pink, like reddish stuff behind them, and it's the sunset, and it's like, oh my gosh, what a shot!
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Yeah, very
There's some
good.
really good, really cool shots in this. There was like one where I think it was a fantasy or like or you know, just like what am I trying to say? When John Candy is like imagining like what
Mhm.
could happen to his mom if he's not there, and there's just like this beautiful shot where like she's walking alone in the street corner, and like she's near like like scaffolding, and there's like stuff like trash and like plastic all around it, and it's like blowing in the wind. And it's like that's like kind of a haunting shot.
Oh, literally, when that came up, I didn't know that he was fantasizing it because I think it's the first time that it happens. And then she falls into the pothole or whatever, and I was like, oh, because I didn't know, I didn't read anything about the movie, I didn't know what it was about, and I was like, oh, I guess the mom dies like that.
See, I was already thinking like, oh, this is in his head.
Oh, really? I was
Yeah.
not. I was like, oh shit.
Without knowing anything, I was like, oh, this is like, you know, he's like really insecure about being on his own without his mom, or her being alone without him.
Yeah, but I will agree that that shot and like the fog and everything is very good. It's very haunting.
Yeah. So, and there's like, once again, nothing, no knock against the performances, but there's this terrible ADR line where like, the movie kind of knew like, yeah, Ali Sheedy doesn't say that much in this movie. Let's ADR a line in where during their second date where she's talking about like, yeah, I want to, you know, go on Broadway someday and do makeup, and it's like it's so clearly like in post, like her mouth is not moving. Like when they're in the carriage and she's like talking, quote unquote, her mouth isn't moving. That was clearly like, we need another like piece of dialogue from her. It's a little undercooked. It still is, but like you can tell like in post they were trying to be like, okay, well let's give her like a little bit more. Yeah, let's see. But yeah, so yeah, I'm not a big fan of the romance in this. I once again, it's not like terribly problematic to me. For at least, you know, in my opinion, it's not as problematic as something like Splash, where I'm just kind of like ew the whole time.
Mhm.
But like, but it's very undercooked, and nothing against the acting or the chemistry even. Like the chemistry's fine. It's really just like there's not enough time to blossom the romance. Why do they like each other? And I feel like, and the movie I feel like knows this too, but then it kind of backs down. It's like, no, we have to have them like be together at the end of the movie. It's like, yeah, why do they like each other? And I don't think the movie ever really answers that.
It doesn't, and I think that's probably. I mean, I think I have two main problems: the resolution with the mom, and this. I don't like they first meet and it's at a bar, or she walks in and then smiles kind of and walks out, and it's like, okay, I get being attracted to each other. All right, I'm gonna pass by you going to where she works, whatever. I'll let it slide. And then that scene is very cute, and I say, "Oh, we have some potential here," and then it doesn't come back to it
No.
because, and it's like, it's so aggravating because they're both very good actors
Yeah.
and could have had something there, and it's like they chose they chose to not care about it as much.
I will say this though. I think the movie does a good job in making me believe it. I don't get why they like each other, but because once again it's against type. He's a bigger guy.
Mhm.
You know, I feel like in some movies they try so hard to make it like, yeah, like, do you believe it? You know, like that it becomes like so unrealistic. I at least can believe why they like it. You know what I mean? Like where they like I could see them on screen together and I'm not like, what? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
cuz once again it's so unconventional. Like it made me believe it in that sense. But when it comes to like a deeper level, like on a script level, I just didn't really get why they liked each other.
Yes, I agree, and it's because like both of them are so charming. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like you could have a really shitty script and throw John Candy in there, and it's like, oh, we like him. We like him already just
I
because
like
of
him. Yeah, yeah.
how he is, and so that's incredible too. It's like there's not a lot of people that can really do that. You know?
Yeah, and John Candy pulled it off because there's some other movies. Uh, I can't. Can you think of any like where it's like an unconventional romance, but you don't really believe it?
I don't even know if I can think of like unconventional romances, because like usually it's like I mean, no knock on these movies because
Right.
I like these movies, but usually it's like the Matthew McConaughey, Kate Hudson, you know what I mean? It's like the, oh, fucking movie stars, you know what I mean?
Right,
So
pretty
I don't
people.
know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and that becomes so like, especially now, it's just been beat over the head so many times. It just becomes so uninteresting, where it's like, oh, these are regular people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and they're like how I mentioned, like John Kent, very handsome in this movie, but it's like, oh, these are regular people, so it's nice to see that. But unconventional romance movies,
I guess one of those
like,
Jay Baruchel, is that his name?
Oh.
The How to Train Your Dragon guy. Remember there was like one where like he's like in love or
It's-
dating Alice Eve.
I think it's called Out of Your League.
Yeah, I don't believe it.
Yeah.
I don't believe it.
No, yeah. I mean, well, because it's literally called Out of Your League. It's like,
Right, the movie's like convincing you like this doesn't work, but also
Yeah, it's like-
is trying to convince you that it does.
it does? Question mark? Yeah, yeah. See, it's like, I think unconventional movies like that, it's like, oh, it's literally like, oh, isn't this funny how like unrealistic this is?
Right, which
You
is
know-
in its own way a little not ideal.
No, and this movie doesn't do that. This movie's just like, hey, look at this. And
It
it's
plays it sincerely. It my biggest kind of pro with this movie is it wears its heart on its sleeve. I don't think it hits it out of the park every time, but I think when it does, I really resonate with it. So let's get into like some of the later scenes. So yeah, they're dating and like the mom is like, huh? Like who is this? Like who are you dating? Oh, she's Sicilian. Huh. And you know, she's you know, you were kind of mentioning this before, but yeah, she's a bigoted character. You know, she's set in her ways. She's, you know, she has a very hard time accepting this, that he's indeed dating someone that isn't Irish.
Yeah, literally every, like, and even the scene that you chose us to do today, it's like even that scene, it's like, oh, literally anybody that's not Irish, anybody.
Yeah, because there's that whole dinner scene where she's like, you know, and once again, I thought it was kind of relatable because I have either known people who are kind of like that or like, you know, or whatever. But yeah, like, you know, yeah, so they have a dinner date, the mom's there, and she's just kind of like ripping her to shreds. Ali Sheedy, it's like she's just like not holding back. She's just like, oh wow, like she's talking about like, you know, the way she looks and, you know, like, oh, you're part this, you know, you're part Sicilian, and Ali Sheedy can't take it, so she leaves, and there's this whole, kind of conflict when they get back home, Ma and John Candy.
Yeah, and that's again, that's an issue that it's like, I mean, I guess I can see the resolution you're talking about with the mother a little bit because she ends up with the Greek man. So I guess
Yeah,
maybe
she
that's
ends
like
up with the Greek man, but also, and this is the part, the section of the movie that I don't quite love. I probably like the least, where it's like, they're about to have the wedding, and then like the mom is like, I don't accept her as a stepdaughter. I accept her as a daughter, and I was like, not earned, but I like the scene fine enough, I guess, but like, yeah, not earned in any way. But that's not the end of her arc, which is why I'll defend why I like it later. But so they're gonna have the wedding, but then the wedding's off because none of them show up because there's this kind of tension, like, oh, you still have a hold of mom, or your mom still has a hold of you, like, you constantly call her. And I was having a little bit of an issue with that because I was like, there's got to be a better way to show that than just him like, oh, can I call my mom real quick? Because that's normal, I think. To check in. I mean, if the scene played out that he was constantly checking and calling like every like 10 minutes, then I get it. But by the way the scene was executed, it was just like, oh, can I call my mom real quick? Okay, I'm back. And she's just kind of like, oh my god, I can't believe you. And it's like, yeah,
I agree with you, but I'll play devil's avocado here. And I think that it's because like they just saw each other, but then again, that doesn't even work because it's like, oh, she visibly drove home with somebody that was like drinking, so of course you're gonna maybe want to call your mom to see if she got home okay. But I guess I can see how it can work because they literally just saw each other.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not so against that, but there was a part of me that was like, oh, I think there should have been a better way to illustrate that than just like, oh, let me call her up real quick. It should have been like, no, I have to run to get her. You know what I mean? It has to be like something inciting, like forward momentum kind of moment where like, no, I can't do this. Like, and he's kind of struggling between both worlds, like trying to be a good boyfriend but also trying to be a good son. And I think like there needed to be, I think, just a little bit more of a drive where it was like kind of like struggle between like finding the right balance between those two things. And I think with some of the scenes that I liked when it came to like, him and the brother's like, oh, she's a little plain, like, whatever, blah blah blah, and he knocks him out. John Candy punches the hell out of him. And in a scene that I was like, hell yeah. I mean, like, because like really, like, even if like that's true, like you should like tell your brother that, you know what I mean? Like, that's just,
I thought that scene was funny too when like John Candy pulls him over to the mirror and he's like, oh, what's this, huh? The cover of GQ, huh? Oh, I'll make sure to buy the next issue. Look at you, huh?
Yeah, right. Yeah, like, you have a lot to say. Who are you to say?
Yeah. Say there's a issue like you had with that scene that I have a little bit, and I want to hear your thoughts on it. There's a scene after she walks out from the dinner with his mom, and she's all like, "How dare you? Like, I want a man that'll like protect me always and never let me down." I was like, you're overreacting. They make her, I think there's better ways to show this stuff. They make her character seem very like she overreacts a lot. Yeah,
I agree. Like, I mean, it's just like it. But the weird thing is, even though I don't love the romance, it actually doesn't take up that much of the movie, which is a problem. But also, like, the scenes with the mom and John Candy are pretty interesting, pretty funny. Like when the bad dinner date happens and they go home and they have a fight, and we did part of that scene in the beginning of the episode. I think that's good. Like, telling it how it is, is like a grandma trait, or like a older mom trait. Like sometimes older people just kind of say what they want to say, and they shouldn't do that. But like, you know, this is when the movie really works for me, where I actually kind of see a slightly sympathetic side to her. Not to say that she's a good person, not to say that she is right in the way she's saying things, but I'm glad we had a scene like that where at least she knows, hey, I'm just telling it how it is. God damn it. Ali Sheedy? Yeah, hey, what's up? Oh. Don't talk about Only the Lonely? Whoops. Too late. Sorry, what? Whoa. Can you even say that word anymore? Jesus Christ, Allie. All right, I'm hanging up. This went south real fast. I need to let you go. All right, goodbye.
Nick,
and that's how I think the movie should have ended.
With a phone call.
No, maybe not a phone call, but like, you know, that, like, I actually do think that they should have not stayed together at the end of the movie. I think maybe because, like, it's undercooked in my opinion, but like, I feel like in some ways the movie is trying to convince you, like, yeah, maybe they're rushing into things, like maybe they shouldn't be like get married like that quickly. Maybe it's more of a defiance thing than like a true love thing. But once again, they don't really explore that, whatever. But
yeah.
But once again, with the scenes that I like, that I was talking about before I was really interrupted by Ali Sheedy. Still love you, babe. Just kidding. But I like the way in those scenes that like she's kind of justifying it. And once again, not saying that's right, not saying that, you know, that like she's a heroic or good character by any means. But I find her an interesting character because of that. Where like we have scenes where like she's justifying, like, hey, I'm just telling how it is, blah 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 blah. Like, here's why I am who I am. You know, like,
yeah.
Here's why I don't think it's bad what I'm doing here. I think I'm helping you. I think I'm protecting you from the world. And you know, she's very overprotective in a lot of ways. And I think there's a great scene, one of my favorites, that really shows her acting chops, where I think they're in a church. And I think the hash things out, like they go to see a priest or whatever. And right after that, they kind of talk about, like, she says something like, "Oh, I don't want you to leave. I could do this stuff for the rest of my life. I could talk to strangers. I could do this, but I won't have you. I'll be alone doing it." And that actually made me feel a little bit. And I thought that was actually like a good, like, sympathetic moment. Once again, not to say that she's right for being overprotective, but like, once again, that's a shade of sympathy that I actually liked. And like, she's a little teary-eyed when she's giving that speech to his son. So the wedding's off. Jim Belushi, everyone's like, what happened? And you know, and Jim Belushi's like kind of unlikable in this, by the way. We haven't talked about it yet, but like, I guess that's the point, because John Candy kind of calls him out later, like, you're so sex crazed. Like, what the hell, dude? Like, can you like stop? And so I like that.
Everything.
Yeah. Like, so I like that scene. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
When I was like, everything's related to sex, man. What are you talking about? That's what he says. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, 45% of people in these buildings are doing something. That's and then the prisoner in the back is like, that's a fact. That's a fact.
That's right. I like that part. Yeah. He's out of line, but he's right. You know, but yeah, I'm not in love with most of the other scenes with him, but like, I liked when John Candy was like telling him off like that, just because I was like, yeah, I am annoyed by this character. Like, yeah, call him out, please. But yeah, so anyway, yeah, so the wedding's off. John Candy's not talking to anyone about it. You know, he goes back to a funeral home, sees her, but kind of backs away, and she's like, huh? Oh, I guess there's nobody. I don't know what's going on. And then, and is that then the scene? Because to kind of set up, like, the brother's like, we could go to Florida, You can change you can have a job there as a cop. You're gonna bring mom, change your pace, a new location. That's great, right? So they're going, and then they have that scene.
Yeah, which was a very touching scene where he's like, "Oh, hold on, I'm gonna go back in and talk to her. I'm not coming with you." And then she just freaking blows her top, and she's just like, "I lost like so much because of you. Like, I'm sick of doing your laundry and making your bed and making you food and stuff like that." Tells him off, and then she leaves, and then like 10 seconds later she comes back, and she's like, "I'm sorry." And then John Candy is like, "You're just telling it like it is. It's all right." And she's like, "Telling it like it is would hurt too much right now."
And I like that scene.
Oh, that scene like tugged at my heartstrings.
That's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
what about that arc doesn't work for you then?
It just seems like, I don't know. I don't know, because that scene is very good, but I wanted something that was like I guess if you interpret that scene, sorry, I'm kind of talking my way through it, but I guess if you interpret that scene in like, oh, all of those rude things that I said, I'm actually not telling it like it is. I'm just using it as like a defense mechanism. Then I think the arc is very good, and then that kind of changes my cons about this movie. Do you think that's what it is?
Well, I think you're right on the money on that a little bit. Not a little bit, a lot of it.
A lot of it.
A lot of it. But like it is a defense mechanism. Like she's saying like all these cruel things because she's hurt right now. Like he just said, "I'm not coming with you," which is like the worst thing that could happen to her. So for her to protect herself, she's like, "You know what? I didn't need you anyway all my life." Because that's really hurtful stuff. But like once again, you feel it in the performance. You feel it in like John Candy's reaction shots. You feel like she doesn't mean what she's saying, but she's so hurt that she feels like she has to hurt him back in the same way. Where it's like once again, mean mom character, but there's shades of three-dimensionality that kind of creep into moments like that in her performance and in the script that I really, really like. And that once again she comes back, says sorry, and doesn't and I love this. Yeah, like she doesn't open up that much. She just says, "If I did, it would hurt even more." And she doesn't say "I love you" to him. And I found that really profound. She's not ready to maybe someday she'll be ready to once again like kind of open up like that. And she's not completely irredeemable because once again she came back to say like, "Look, I know I'm rude. I know that I'm a little much." And John Candy kind of jokes about that, like, "Yeah, you are kidding," but like she kind of has a self-awareness by the end of the movie about that. But once again, she's not quite there yet. But you know that maybe in the future she will finally get to open up a little bit more and accept change more willingly. But this is a good first step. This is good, like in her own way, in her own mean, shallow, kind of petty way. She's saying "I love you" in this really rude way. But once again, it's progress. It's interesting. I once again not a smooth arc by any means. Not one of the greatest like mean character turned nicer by the end kind of arc that I wish the movie like leaned into a little more. But once again, I think it's there, and I think it's quite effective in some points.
Beautifully said by the Nicholas Manna. That was beautiful. I'll ask you another question. Do you think, like that scene where she's saying these rude, terrible things, do you think like the bigotry that she was like, or when she's saying bigoted things like throughout the whole movie, do you think that is also a defense mechanism for wanting to protect herself or her son? Or do you think that could be a thing, like she doesn't actually mean the thing that she's saying, just like in that scene?
that's a whole other can of worms, I think, about just like racism. But I will say that there is at least some points where it's a defense mechanism, and you know, in a better movie, I think that could have been explored even more. But I think there's some interpretation there where you could be like, okay, she's kind of protecting herself here. She's being mean, because really, you know, and there's once again a whole other can of worms. But like, you know, being mean in general is kind of, in a lot of ways, a defense thing. Like, I have to protect myself right now because I'm hurt. How do I do that in an unhealthy way? But still, you know, like that, you know, that's, you know, and there's a whole kind of thing.
Oh yeah. Here at NYC Actors Talk Film, we talk about the hard-hitting subjects.
NYC Actors Talk Meanies.
Talk meanies. Talk bullies.
Bullies.
This mom's a grade A bully.
Grade A bigot. Yeah.
I think this movie's very. After discussing this, I think this movie's very interesting.
So yeah, they get back together, John Candy and Ali Sheedy, and once again, I actually found it charming, just because I liked the beginning of that relationship, even though as a whole, I wish they did more with it. But the mom goes away, goes to Florida with the charming Greek lad. It's such a charming little subplot. Once again, very natural progression where she's like very against it at first, and where once again a very natural character arc. She's not completely like, let's make out. She's like, later. You know, which I think once again I think that's the strongest stuff of the movie. It's just her performance and her chemistry with John Candy. I think that's like the whole movie was kind of about that. I feel like there's like a brilliant movie somewhere in here, and instead, in my opinion, it's a pretty good movie, and that once again is unique enough. Wears its heart on its sleeve. You know, romance. Yeah, so like John Candy at the end has a vision. Again, you know, he's embracing Ali Sheedy, and you think, oh, is he going to have another nightmare, you know, fantasy about what's going to happen to the mom? But instead, she's like beating up fake, you know, dream terrorists. There are therapists on the plane.
Terrorists. They're not therapists. Terrorists.
Therapists.
Dude, that's a really funny joke. That's such a funny joke. There are therapists on the plane.
You know, he's having a fantasy where she's okay. That like, and she's saying right to him like, I'm gonna be okay. And then the movie ends. The score is quite good, by the way. I really like the music in the movie. And once again, kind of like Uncle Buck, but I think in a better way here, the movie leaves me with a good feeling, where I'm like, okay, I enjoyed my experience.
Yeah, I'd have to say I enjoy this film. I enjoy this film more than Uncle Buck, which I think I'm surprised to say, because Uncle Buck is this, like, I mean, hearing about it before I saw it, it was like, oh, this legendary, like, oh, Uncle Buck, you know, it's this legendary comedy, which it has its moments, but I think this movie utilizes John Candy a whole lot better. And also, one last fun fact for the podcast, talking about Maureen O'Hara and John Candy, their chemistry in this movie. Interesting story. I guess this movie didn't have enough in their budget to have a trailer for Maureen O'Hara on this movie. And John Candy was shocked and appalled by this. He was like, how are you treating this legendary, like, film star like this? How do you not have a budget for a trailer for her? And so he gave her his trailer. And that is such a nice act. And then the movie, the producers and stuff like that were like, we can't have the star of this movie without a trailer. And then they gave John Candy his own trailer. Isn't that crazy?
It just goes to show how kind he was.
Right? And, like, I keep thinking, because the last miniseries we did, Robin Williams, a kind, amazing soul. John Candy, the same thing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, good story.
Yeah.
Good story.
Right? Right? And I just thought it was such bullshit too. Like talking about it right now, I'm like, oh, you didn't have it in your budget for another trailer? Oh, but if John Candy's without a trailer, oh, we can we can get we can find a few bucks here and there to okay, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's all right. You know, John Candy was against the grain. We love to see it.
Yes.
So yeah. Final thoughts and rating.
Oh boy. Final thoughts. After it's amazing talking about movies sometimes where like I'm like, oh, I have some problems with this movie, and then we kind of like talk it out and it's like, oh, never mind, that problem is not a problem at all. That was just like in my first viewing. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah, you're welcome, Hunter.
yeah, thank you,
Just
Nick.
kidding. Just
No,
kidding.
really though, it's like, oh, like with the character arc, like that was a problem, or the mom's character arc. I find it so much more interesting than when I first watched it. Um, yeah, I think it's a very interesting movie. I think I don't know if John Candy's at peak John Candy here, but
No.
I like it. I like his dramatic chops here. I like him being the leading man. Yeah, I think the rating here is very difficult. I think I'm gonna give it a 6.5 out of 10. I think that's pretty fair. But yeah, where it ranks, I haven't put it in yet, so I don't know. I don't know where it ranks yet, but
Well, would you put it like second, third,
yeah, let me look at my.
better than Uncle Buck? Question mark.
See, that's why it's so difficult because it's like the movie, the performance, is it a mixture of both? I think I'm gonna have to put it second behind Planes, Trains,
Okay.
before Uncle Buck. Yeah,
Interesting.
number 2.
Cool. So yeah, I enjoyed myself. I like this movie, flaws and all. It's not a movie that I adore or anything, but I do think there's some things that I do adore about it. It's a bit messy. It's a bit all over the place in some places. As George Lucas would say, I think I went too far in a few places. Replace George Lucas with this movie. And the movie itself is saying, I think I went too far in a few
I think
places.
it was too far.
But I liked how sincere. I liked how sincere the movie was. I liked the performances by Candy and Maureen O'Hara, and I thought it was charming. I thought, once again, not the deepest movie, but I think like it left me like charmed. And once again, I was like, oh, underrated. Like I don't see a lot of people talking about this one, and not to say it's like the best John Candy movie even, but I was like, yeah, like this one is a little underlooked. Like it's a little under the radar, and I think people need to see this just to see like, yeah, John Candy could hold his own in a movie like this, in a dramatic, more dramatic at least, and romantic, charming way that we don't really see a lot of in his movies. So I thought that was just like substantial in its own way. So I probably like a very generous 7 out of 10. I enjoyed myself. Technically, it would maybe be a 6, but I think there's some things that I really liked that I have to push it to a 7. So yeah, this is my second favorite John Candy performance. Definitely better than Uncle Buck. Not quite as good as Planes, Trains, but it's a solid performance that I think is worth looking into or worth watching. So yeah, that was our Only the Lonely episode. Thank you guys for listening. We are NYC Actors Talk Film, a podcast where we go through actors' filmography and most prolific work. We have a YouTube channel at NYC Actors Talk Film. We have an Instagram at NYC Actors Talk Film. We have a website, NYC Actors Talk Film. Our last episode of NYC Actors Talk John Candy is next week, where we talk Cool Runnings, baby. So this is a shorter mini series, but I think worth it. This has been once again lighter, more breezy, but I've enjoyed going into this guy's work.
Yeah. I've only ever seen on this list anyway. I've only ever seen Cool Runnings. So
Oh, interesting. So this next one will be the one you've already watched, and I haven't.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't be lonely. You're not the only You know what? You're not the only lonely.
You're not the only lonely.
There are other lonelies. You're not the only one.
That's right. Let's be alone together. Thanks for listening, folks.